Hey guys, Kevin Cleary here with my full review of the Spyderco Magnitude. Now, this was one of Spyderco's mid-year, really kind of late-year releases. And when I saw it, this is one of the ones, along with the Gale Bradley Advocate, that I was pretty interested in. So I was pretty happy to be able to get my hands on one. And I've already done a first impressions video, so maybe you've seen that and been waiting for this. If not, then you'll get all the same information, most of the same information, I guess, again as we go through this video. This is, of course, Peter Carey design, and it's kind of a follow-up to, or maybe replacement for, the Rubicon, sort of in the same family. I will say, for me, this knife is much preferred to the Rubicon. I like the blade shape better, I like the size and weight better, I like the ergonomics better. There's just a lot of things that I wasn't into on the Rubicon. In fact, I even almost like the Rubicon 2 better than the original. So, and that I think most people would disagree with. Anyway, very cool knife. And you know, one of the things that really stands out to me about this is just the overall aesthetics of this design. Very nice looking. And I will say this, even though we're not to the handle part of the review yet, this has got to be the nicest looking carbon fiber that I have ever seen. And I've had tons of carbon fiber knives, but never anything quite this good. This is really, really, really gorgeous. Overall, you know, this is going to be a fairly positive review. I do like the knife. There are a couple little issues that I'll bring up along the way and we'll talk about. But I think, you know, if you're just kind of trying to figure out, is this thing any good? The answer is yeah, it's actually very good. All right, so let's start off the way we always do with size and weight. This knife is 8 1/4 inches overall. Okay, so 8, and it's actually just a fraction of an inch under that. It is 3.5 inches of blade and almost 3.5 inches of cutting edge, and 4 3/4 inches on the handle. And it's, again, just like, again, a fraction of a fraction over that 4 3/4 inches. Now, the weight on this is pretty hefty for its small size, okay? But you can see how thick it is and how thick the blade stock is. So from that perspective, I think you can understand where the 5.2 ounces comes from, right? So it is a little stocky for its size. Now, let's go ahead and move through the rest of the features here, starting with the blade. And we'll have a few things to say here, and I know there's been a number of comments about this blade. Let me say initially that I love the grind, I love the blade shape, I love just the overall design of this. Very, very deep hollow grind, making this super, super thin behind the edge. A couple people have said that this could be ground maybe a little higher. A higher hollow grind would be nice. And I actually can get behind that. I would have liked to see a slightly higher grind. But from an aesthetic standpoint, I do really like the way this one has been done. So I gotta say, I like that. I do like the grind lines on Spyderco's. They just are so attractive. And if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably noticed that I'll often post Spyderco's and then I'll work through the filters to find the ones that show off those grind lines the best. Okay, so nice thick blade stock on this, and it is S30V. Now, S30V, for a knife of this at this price point, and for a knife that I'm gonna say is supposed to kind of be a showcase knife for Spyderco. You know, they made a big fuss over the Rubicon, and maybe not so much over this one, but I feel like this is one of those knives in the lineup that's supposed to sort of say, hey, look what we can do, look how awesome we are as a manufacturing company. And to make a knife that way and then use S30V steel, I don't know if I follow that logic. It seems like for the price point and for the kind of knife this is supposed to be, a high-end carry, a high-end folder, collectors, folder that's going to appeal to collectors, if I could spit that out. Feels like they should have gone with something higher end. Even S35VN doesn't feel right for this. It should have been maybe 204P or XHP or M390 or you know, something a little more, a little higher end. Anyway, but from a performance standpoint, both just in general And in this knife in particular, S30V has been very, very good. It has a reputation for being a steel that holds a working edge for a really, really long time. And certainly that has been my experience. It's also a good high performance steel. So on a knife like this, where you've got a fairly thin edge and a nicely done secondary bevel there, you know, you've got the performance from S30V to back up that kind of a grind, okay? On one hand, I kind of have an issue with it. On the other hand, in terms of performance, I don't, okay? So I know that's kind of being of two minds, or, you know, accuse me of speaking out both sides of my mouth if you want to. But the reality is, this steel is more than adequate for what they're trying to do with it here. But from a sort of collector steel snob standpoint, I would have liked something a little different. All right, so by the way, I will say great edge geometry, really nice, slices beautifully, and I love that choil. And I also love the fact that in a fairly small package, they've given you almost that full 3.5 inches of blade in this sort of, you know, a slight variation on a reverse tanto blade shape. But one last thing about that, it does do what it's supposed to do, which is give you a lot of steel out near the tip, which makes this a nice strong blade, which I do appreciate. All right, so that's my take on the blade. I know some of you will disagree with that. Will be more strongly opposed to the S30V. I'm opposed to it, but I don't feel like it's the end of the world. All right, let's carry on and go and talk about lockup and deployment on this knife. So we do have a titanium liner lock. You got some nice little thumb jimping on the lock bar there where your thumb needs to be able to catch it, and it does that really nicely. It's a ball bearing flipper, so it falls closed really, really well. You can spider flick it. You can do all of the typical, you know, spider drop. I don't know if I'm going to do this. Well, kind of. I don't really have enough room here in front of the camera to do a full-on proper spider drop, but that's okay. You can flick it out for sure. That was left-handed. So it deploys very quickly, very smoothly, and very reliably, which is essentially what we're looking for. I do wish there were a little more detent on this. Not a lot more, but just a little bit more. One thing about that is here in Canada, one of the things they'll do when a knife comes through customs is, you know, gravity knives are not allowed. And so sometimes they'll take it and try to, you know, whip the blade out of the handle, and you can whip this one out pretty easily, actually. Now, what's strange about that is this box was opened and this knife was fully inspected by CBSA, and it came through the border no problem. I've had other knives that were harder to open than this that were refused. So, you know, the frustration about that, I guess, is the inconsistency. Now, mentioned the detent. The only other sort of nitpick I have in terms of lockup and deployment is the lock bar cutout, that relief cut right here. I kind of could do without it, right? Generally speaking, I could do without it because it is going to make that lock bar just a little weaker. And if you ever watched any of those cold steel crazy comparison test videos, one of the things that will happen is a relief cut in a titanium frame lock, or in this case, even a titanium liner lock, can be the weak point that causes the knife to fail. So prefer not to have them. Anyway, otherwise, lockup and deployment is really, really good. It's fast, it's reliable, it's solid. Just those two little things. I'd like to see a slightly stronger detent on this, and I could do without the relief cut. Otherwise, really, really nicely done. All right. Now, moving on from there, we want to talk about this handle. And the handle is going to be, you know, there'll be a little more discussion here. There's actually quite a bit of stuff going on. So we do have titanium liner lock. You know, you don't see a lot of these, so it's interesting that they went this route. And very nicely finished titanium with a G10 backspacer, G10 decorative sort of pivot insert there with a decorative pivot screw on the inside. And that insert just sort of makes, you know, the pivot screw here is not very large, but with the G10 around it, it makes it look larger, which does, I think, add a nice feature to the knife and really ties things in together well. I gotta say, compared to the Rubicon, I'm a big fan of the the aesthetics, the coloring and stuff like that on this knife. I've got to mention again, the carbon fiber on this is absolutely amazing. Definitely the nicest that I have seen. The backspacer is very comfortable. It's sort of a gear pattern backspacer, all right, but not exactly, sort of, you know, and it's toned down from the spikes sort of stuff that were on the Rubicon. This is a little more, a little softer, a little less pointed, if you will. So all of that stuff is really well done. I guess I should pick up the knife one more time and let you see on the inside that this is milled out, which is very much appreciated to save a little bit of weight, even though it's still a fairly hefty little guy. Okay, so that's definitely something to be appreciated, a nice detail that they paid attention to. Finally, before I get to how it actually feels in hand, I want to mention the pocket clip, which is disappointingly stainless steel. I feel like this definitely should have been a titanium clip. I don't know, you know, who knows why they make these choices, but yeah, I would have really appreciated that for a knife, again, at this price point, and for a knife that's trying to do what this one's trying to do. And again, I'm going to say, you know, this is a knife that's meant to be a very high-end production knife that's really supposed to say about Spyderco, look at the awesome stuff we can build. And overall, it is really nice, okay? I'm not for a minute detracting from the very good job that Spyderco has done implementing the design, or Peter Carey's design on this knife. But I would have really liked to see a titanium clip here. The steel one works fine, it looks fine. This is strictly from the standpoint of what I feel like Spyderco was trying to do with this knife, was to kind of show off a bit. And when you're showing off, you know, you bring out the good china, right? So let's see some higher end materials on the clip and the blade. Otherwise, though, it does function really well, in and out of pocket well. And the 3 screws here, they do give you a little bit of purchase to grab the knife, even though they look a little out of place. All right. By the way, that clip is single position only. If I flip the knife over, you can see there's no option to move it to the other side. All right. And by the way, this is one of those knives, you know, here's the choice you have to make when you're looking at, you know, how am I going to implement the clip on a knife? Is the clip part of the design, or do I want to make the clip sort of not noticeable? And this is definitely, the clip is part of the design, right? It's big and it's milled out. I mean, it's drilled here, and it's a shape that goes along with the handle. It's definitely to be implemented into the overall sort of flow of the design here. Now, I want to finally get to the ergonomics on this, which are superb. Okay, this is one of the nicest, even Spyderco's that I've felt. I mean, it just melts into your hand and it feels so comfortable. Part of that is because of just the extra size. The 3D machining definitely makes a difference. If you've had other knives with 3D machining, you know that to be the case. The finger choil, which gives me the option to choke up, is something that I absolutely love on a knife. And in any way you kind of grip this, there are just no hot spots, no issues of any kind. So really, really appreciate the ergos on this knife, possibly more so than every other thing about it. All right, really, really well done. Now, let's pull in some comparisons, and I want to, let's start off with the Para 2. Very similar size, very much lighter, but similar blade length. There's more cutting edge on the Magnitude. And while we've got this one here, let me do some honorable mentions, okay? This gives you something to look at for a second. Well, I say if you're interested in this, you probably want to check out the Spyderco Domino and the Spyderco Southern. Both pretty cool knives, similar materials and stuff, both high-end Spydercos. The ZT-0562, the 0450, maybe even the 0900 are kind of smaller titanium frame locks. I would say a lot of those kind of fit in this same category as this knife. There are probably others that could be mentioned, but those ones kind of spring to mind. Oh, and of course, if you're looking for something, like if you like the design of this and sort of that short, fat look and stuff like that, for some reason, and I can't even tell you what the reason is, maybe if you want to comment below with, with what you think's going through my head, this knife does remind me of the Manix. Now there are a number of different Manix 2s out there. I prefer the XL, but there's, you know, the lightweight and the blurple and a number of others. Of course, maybe it's because the original Manix 2 had the saber grind, which is the one I would buy. If I was going to buy a Manix 2, I'd buy the one with the saber grind. Anyway, there's the pair of 2 for comparison number 1. Let's pull in a knife that kind of has a few different similar things going on. Here is a carbon fiber handle, liner lock, flipper, the Viper Maga. Again, this is a pretty different looking knife, but one that actually functions really well. You know, it looks really different, but then when you actually get it in hand and do something, it works really nicely. As they often are, the liners on this are a little thin for my preferences, but these knives again remind me of each other. One other, while I'm pulling this one out of the way, one other honorable mention, the Lion Steel Kerr is very similar in size, in weight, now it's not as expensive, but even in materials, it's kind of similar. There's some titanium and stuff going on there with the Kerr. My Lion Steel Kerr is not here. It's sent to Lion Steel because the detent ball just fell out for some reason. Anyway, I've been in contact with them. They're like, yeah, send it over. We'll take care of you. So let you know when that comes back. But that is, again, another knife where if you appreciate this knife, which is, you know, for people who appreciate higher end things, fit and finish, that kind of stuff, the Kerr, I think, would be a knife worth checking out. I've got another, now this is kind of to go in a different direction, a little random here, but because the handle's thick, because it's a liner lock, the 0200 kind of makes me think of this knife. If you look at there, you've got some pretty thick stainless steel liners, 3D machined G10 handle. And of course, it's a flipper that doesn't have a very strong detent. So a lot of things kind of go together with the Magnitude and the 0200, although the 200 is going to be a much more of a pocket brick. One more knife that again seems like it's coming out of left field, but really reminds me of this knife because of its size, because of its blade shape, because of its ergonomics. The Cold Steel American Lawman. You know, it's got that nice choil at the front. It's got the hollow ground blade, which I do love. And it's about the same size, okay? So there you go. Those are the comparisons. Now, let's give you sort of an overall impression on the knife. My thinking on this is, hey, this is, you know, this as a showpiece knife is a little bit lacking. You know, when you, as I said before, when you're going to show off, you want to kind of pull out all the stops, get out the best of the best. And so in that sense, the blade steel and the pocket clip are a little disappointing. The other sense in which they're a little disappointing is from a sort of collector, steel snob, material snob standpoint. And yeah, of course, we want to be able to brag to our friends and to the people who follow us on Instagram that, hey, this has this crazy high-end steel and it's got titanium hardware and all kinds of other things. So there is a bit of a miss on the fact that, again, that blade and that clip are not quite as high-end as the rest of the knife. Now, the rest of the knife is very, very, I mean, it's so well done that I can actually overlook those, what I'm going to call fairly minor issues, okay? The ergonomics are amazing. The construction is amazing. The feel is outstanding. The overall look of this is beautiful. So really, you know, you've got a very functional piece of artwork here. And you know, for those reasons, I absolutely love this blade. Now, if some of those things that I picked on are going to totally put you off, then yeah, this is maybe not one for you to pick up. However, if you are in love with the way this thing looks and you think and maybe, you know, you've held one at a store and you've been really impressed with the ergos, you know, I don't think you're going to be disappointed in the performance of this knife. So from a performance standpoint, there's really no major issue that I can nail it on. So that's my take on the Spyderco Magnitude. Definitely a win with a couple little qualifications there. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will talk to you soon.